Is this rock beautiful? It doesn't really look like it. It looks dirty. It's all knobbly. It's not polished. It's not smooth. It's not colorful. In our culture, we're really interested in how the outside of things looks. We've got a $600 billion global beauty industry where we try to polish the outside of things, make them look good. But there's an event that's coming up that disrupts that investment, and the event is death. Let's say that you're this rock and this hammer is death. Death doesn't destroy your consciousness. You are still you. Your spirit survives after death. But everything external on the outside that you had, your body and how it looks, and your wealth and your reputation, all of that gets obliterated. And the only thing that's left is what's inside. You right now have a spirit that's been growing inside you for your entire life. And after death wipes away the external stuff, it's the spirit, it's the inner beauty that people will see when they look at you. And in this show, we're going to talk about how to make yourself spiritually attractive. I need to tell you something about yourself using a geode. At some point, you got to have the where geodes come from talk, so we're going to have that right now. Geodes happen as a result of two different processes. There is an external process and an internal process in the formation of geode. Geode begins its life as often like a lava flow. There's magma and lava, lava flows out of a mountain. And as it cools into rock, there's an air bubble that's trapped inside of the rock. So the rock around it, which will be this part here, it cools, there's some pressure, a few things contribute to the process of it being like it is, but it's kind of set at the beginning. But then there's this air bubble. And the process that leads to all this cool looking, shiny wonder is very different, and it's ongoing because there's water that over the eons seeps in there, and the water has minerals in it, and as the water evaporates, the minerals get left behind, and then layer by layer these build up, and there is this amazing crystalline structure that's in there. But this inner process is distinctly different from the outer process. You have an inner process and an outer process going on in you. And you have two distinct parts to you. You have an outer part, which is the physical you, which is your body. And then you have an inner part, which is your spirit. You could say your mind. According to Swedenborg, they're the same thing. Either way, this is one thing, this is the other thing. And the process that leads to the body, we know what that is. That's genetics. A lot of that is set when you're born. It's just like how that got combined, the two different genomes of your parents. Also, there's an influence from the physical world, like what are you eating, how much are you exercising, how much sun do you get, whatever. Did you have something happen where it made you look different? That's one process, and it leads to the way that your physical body looks. But how your physical body looks has nothing to do with how your spirit looks. And the processes that affected your physical body are not the same ones that are building your spirit. Swedenborg puts it this way in Heaven and Hell 99. Even though we completely correspond physically to all of heaven, meaning that the human form is an image in general of heaven, we are still not images of heaven in outward form, but only in inward form. So if you look at yourself, I don't look like heaven. There's the inside you can. Our deeper reaches are receptive of heaven, while our more outward ones are receptive of this world. And so here's the inner process. To the extent then that those deeper reaches, meaning your spirit, do accept heaven, we are heavens in least form, in the image of the greatest. But to the extent that our deeper reaches are not receptive, we are not heavens or images of the greatest. So using the geode metaphor, we get to choose whether or not that water gets in, whether we let the water in. The water would be like the love and truth from God. So you've got a mind, and all the time there is like the equivalent of water that wants to come in. There is good impulses, do the right thing, don't do the wrong thing. There is the desire for truth and the acquiring of truth and the mulling it over, and what does that mean, and how can I apply it to my life, and how can I make life better for the human race, and how can I live the good life? Those things are constantly trying to get in, and as we let them in, they change our spirit to the point where they change how you look spiritually. That right now, even if no one had cracked this geode open and it was just sitting there, and you might just think it's just a rock that looks like that, right then in that moment, this inside, it's there. It just can't be seen. So your spirit is sitting right there. It's not like, oh yeah, well, you're building towards something that will exist someday. You have a way that your spirit looks right now. And the more that we let that love and truth in, the more that we act on that, your spirit in real time becomes more and more beautiful. It doesn't work like that with the physical body, because you can become a very good person and you keep getting older and less beautiful physically. But the spirit really does change as heaven influences it. This is why in L'Oreal or beauty companies don't just say, well, go and be good and then you'll look beautiful. There is an impact, but it's an inside and hidden impact. And Swedenborg could see this, because when you can see the spiritual world, which he reports that he could, you can observe this, and that there can be quite a big difference between what's outside and what's inside in any one of us. He says in Heaven and Hell 99, I have been shown at times what a spiritual person is like in form, and I have seen that in some people who were lovely and attractive in physical appearance, that inner form was misshapen and grotesque, what you would call an image of hell rather than of heaven. While in some who were not beautiful, the inner form was graceful, radiant, and angelic. After death, our spirit looks the way it actually did within the body while we were living in this world. And that is because in the spiritual plane of existence, everything looks how it is. Here you can have things that do not look how they are. You can have, like, what is being cool in school? It's like oftentimes it's kind of being mean to people and feeling like you're better than them. And that looks, wow, that's so great. I want to be like that person. They're cool. Whereas actually, what is actually beautiful? Kindness, compassion, empathy. When you see those things exercised, you can just tell people get moved by that. Like that is spiritually beautiful. And in the spiritual world, that's manifest. It's manifest. So you can see that people who have that good stuff in them, who have allowed the divine, because Swedenborg says all good qualities come from the divine, people who have allowed the divine to implant those good qualities, those are just gorgeous. And that is what shapes how you look spiritually. So what we're saying in the last section is that God, something good that comes out of God, can actually come down and influence the way that your spirit looks. If you accept an influence from God, it will make your spirit more beautiful. But how does that happen? How does that work? Because it sounds like you're saying to me that something very different coming out of God changes into something very different, which is your spirit forming into the form of heaven. This is how that works. So we're going to talk about correspondence, which is everybody's favorite thing in the world. Correspondence basically is when something inner influences something outer. The best example I can ever give, I think that we've done it on this show before, which is that right now there's a correspondence happening with me, because I have in my mind / spirit, same thing, there is a desire to communicate this well to you. There's a desire to say these things articulately and get it so that by the end you're like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. That desire then works in my mind, my intellect, to try to pick out words and think of how I would string those together. But then we make the jump, because those things are spiritual. my will, my intellect are spiritual. But then we make the jump to where then my spirit says to my body, okay, move this little thing you got in your throat called your vocal cords, open your mouth up, do this thing with your tongue, keep twirling your hands around to try to communicate this. The inner is influencing the outer. The mind is influencing the body. It's not the same. The desire and the ideas are not the same as these physical motions, but they respond to each other. If I want to say something important, I'll make a big hand gesture. I'll change my vocal tone. They match each other. They're different, but they match each other. You got it? It goes beyond human beings. This is from Heaven and Hell 100. Correspondence, though, extends to much more than human beings. There is a correspondence of the heavens with each other. The second or intermediate heaven is responsive to the third or central one. The first or outermost heaven is responsive to the second or intermediate one. And this is responsive to the physical forms in us, the forms that are referred to as our members, organs, and viscera. So it is our bodily nature in which heaven finally comes to rest, on which it stands like a foundation. Even in me, the ideas that I'm getting and the desires that I'm having, they don't even start in me. They start above me somewhere in the spiritual world. And there's an influence that I'm not even perceptible of, a couple of influences, and then it gets down to my consciousness. So there's this chain of being, and all of us, we're the basement. Our physical form is like the basement of reality, which, sure, maybe the basement's can be a little dank and messy sometimes, but if you don't have it, nothing else stands. You're doing an important job being the basement of reality. So it is with the different heavens. Just like the jump from my spirit to my body is a major jump, there is a jump from the second heaven to the first. So there's the same kind of change in influence, and from the third to the second. And because of this difference, I know it doesn't make any sense yet, but it's going to. Because of this difference, you can have influence that starts very differently, but yet exerts itself and brings about an effect that's completely different from how it started. A good way to think about this is by looking at physics and molecules and how the physical world around us works. Because there are layers to the physical world of magnification. Like there's stuff that's super, super small. There's stuff that gets bigger, and these layers have influence on each other. So, for example, the smallest stuff we believe, we being scientists, I'm not one of them, but this is what I've heard from them. The smallest stuff that makes up reality is called quarks. There's quarks and these leptons and whatever. There's these teeny little things, and they have a nature to them. They have these little parts and the weak force that holds them together. So because they are what they are, that influences how the next level up, which is atoms, work. So atoms couldn't have the electromagnetic fields that they have, the structure that they have, the way they are, wouldn't work if it wasn't for the way that quarks are. And the way that quarks are influences the way that atoms are, because atoms are made up of them. Molecules are a bunch of atoms together, but molecules wouldn't have happened unless atoms were the way that they were, because atoms have this orbiting electron, and that creates this charge. That makes it so molecules have the nature that they have. And then molecules, like let's take carbon, for example, because carbon is how it is because of its nature, because of the atoms that are in it and the quarks that are in that changes the way life is. And all the elephants that run around on the savannah, and all the crocodiles and that also swim around on the savannah, and everything in the savannah and everything else and all the other ecosystems of the world, that all is like it is. The way that respiration works, the way that muscles fire, all of that has to do with the way that carbon is, which has to do with the way that atoms are, which has to do with the way that quarks are. So a quark, you don't zoom all the way in on a quark and then see like, oh, there's a little teeny deer and wolves in there. It's not the same, but its nature absolutely changes the nature of the large stuff that we're familiar with. So this is a cool thing that I found in Swedenborg that shows how there's a similar influence chain which leads from God to actual formation of things, like the formation of spirits. So this is Secrets of Heaven 4411. When the light which proceeds from the Lord flows into the inmost or third heaven, it is received there as good, which is called charity. So you have something that's coming out of the Lord. Swedenborg is here calling it light. He's not talking about physical light. There's something that's coming out of God, some like incomprehensible divine thing. When it flows into the inmost heaven, it's what Swedenborg calls charity. So God's influence becomes their charity. Just so you know what charity is, Swedenborg says, charity is an inward affection consisting in a desire which springs from a person's heart to do good to the neighbor, which is the delight of his life. And that desire involves no thought of reward. So it's a particular kind of feeling. It's love, but like a really pure love that I just want to do everything nice for everyone. And I'm not trying to do this to gain credit. I just want you to be happy. God's influence creates that feeling in the third heaven. He goes on, when it flows into the middle or second heaven, directly or indirectly, so when it gets to this layer, it is received as the truth which is rooted in charity. So here it becomes concepts, ideas, things to which people can look and live by. So the same thing has created something very different, but yet is the offspring of this because of the difference in the nature of the kinds of people that are here. But when this truth flows into the ultimate or first heaven, here we go, let's get crazy, indirectly or directly, it is received in objects formed from spiritual substance, as is to be seen there as a paradise garden, or in other places as a city containing palaces. Boom! This stuff that becomes love and then becomes truth, when it shows up in the outermost heaven, it becomes matter, spiritual matter. So if you're walking along and you're going up to, there's this beautiful city that exists in the spiritual world, it does so because it is influenced by the truth. Somehow the truth that is in this heaven manifests as, I'm serious, a city or a garden or something like that. So this divine force, who knows what it was like in the Lord, or if you could even see it or comprehend it, as it goes down the chain, ends up as structure. It ends up as biology or architecture. And that's where spiritual reality comes from. So it is that same chain of influence that goes from the urge to do goodness and truth in God to, when you let it in, becomes beauty in your spirit, makes you look like a handsome or beautiful human being, makes you look like an embodiment of the feelings that are there. We're talking about layers of influence. We're talking about how charity becomes truth, becomes spiritual objects, and if we allow that to rest in us, it shapes our spirit more and more into being the form of heaven, which is like the form of truth, the form of charity. But there's another layer that we need to talk more about. And the best way to do that is to look at balloon slicing. Have you seen this? I don't know if that's exactly what it's called, but this is a thing where somebody stacks balloons and then cuts them. Watch. People are so ingenious. So what that's showing, though, is that what you see at first is that outermost balloon. Oh, that's what's going on. But really, the outermost balloon is not why the thing is its shape. The only reason it's in that shape is because the balloon right below it is pushing on it. So it's influencing, like correspondence. Something inner is influencing what's outer. But it's not actually that one, right? There's another layer inside it that was animating that layer. But when you get down to the core, you realize none of the balloons were what were driving that thing. There is something within that's driving it. And Swedenborg says the same thing about these spiritual layers. Heaven and Hell 101 is absolutely necessary to realize, though, that all correspondence with heaven is correspondence with the Lord's divine human. Because heaven is from him, because he is heaven, as has been explained in the preceding chapters. For unless the divine human flowed into every bit of heaven, and in accord with correspondences into every bit of our world, there would be no angels and none of us. So when you get down, you keep going, peeling back the layers and balloons, you get to this. But if you're going back layer by layer, what you end up with is the divine human. So it's God's divine humanity, however that is, that when it's received in heaven, in the inmost sense, becomes charity, then that becomes truth, and that becomes matter, the spiritual matter, and then that becomes our spirits. So the beauty that's showing up in you is the beauty of God when your spirit's in alignment with God. Can I talk to you about Jesus? Can I talk to you about Jesus? Heaven and Hell 101. Again, then, we can see from this why the Lord became an individual on earth. So that's talking about this divine human being born on earth, which Swedenborg says Jesus Christ was this incredibly important event, and clothed his divine nature with a human nature from the first to last. So what happened when Jesus Christ was born is that you had the inmost layer, which is a divine human, able to be present at every single layer, including in a layer that he fully controlled in the outermost layer. So you had a what's that called? Vertical integration? Is that what that's called in business? You had vertical integration. This happened because the divine human on which heaven depended before the coming of the Lord was no longer adequate to sustain everything, since we, the foundation of heaven, had undermined and destroyed the design. Remember this geode? How it happens because water gets in there and evaporates? We don't have to let the water in. You don't have to do that. There's this thing called freedom, where you can say, no, I don't want that process to go on. When comes knocking on your head, hey, you could go and do this thing that's good. Hey, maybe you need to examine yourself, and is that really, are you harming people doing that? You say, no, I don't want to do that. I just want to pursue the pleasures of insanity. We don't have to do that. The problem is we're all connected. So us being the foundation of heaven, if we go and choose, no, I don't want love and truth, I want evil and falsity, the foundation starts to crack. And it's gotten to the point where, because so many people were choosing self-centeredness, materialism, and dominion and all that stuff, God's mechanism by which heaven was maintained was breaking down. So Jesus Christ was God saying, all right, I am going to reestablish full communication, get the road reopened between the inmost and the outermost, because it's only through that, the interconnection of all those, that angels and human beings and all that can exist. So the event of Jesus Christ happening is still reverberating in your mind. This is the fact that you can sense inner beauty, that you can say, oh, that person may have a beautiful spirit. You can kind of see that through. That's probably one of the reverberations of Jesus Christ happening. That's why it was so important for it to go down, and why God needed to go through the same channel that everyone else goes through, because it was to open up something that could be universally accessible. The message is that what is spiritual is what's important, because what's spiritual lasts. We get all worked up trying to polish the outer rock when really just in a blink of an eye, basically, from now. It's not that long until we all cross over to the spiritual world. It'll be the inner stuff that shows. And really that's not even just about living now or going into the afterlife. It's always about the inner stuff. It's not about how cool are you, it's about how kind are you. This is something that is a principle throughout all of life, and we know it when we're in a good state of mind. Swedenborg walked between these two worlds. He could visibly see the inner world and the outer world, and he was coming up against this dichotomy, this upside downness of everything, how we think that the outermost is what's the most important and don't even really know that the innermost exists. So this is a time when he was talking to angels about it, and they were shocked at the state of the world and of people's minds. This is Heaven and Hell 102. He said, angels are stunned when they hear that there are people who credit everything to nature and nothing to the divine, as well as people who believe that their bodies, in which so many wonders of heaven are gathered, are fashioned out of nature, meaning out of just physical material, that with no spiritual mechanism behind it. And even that this is the source of our rational capacity. On the contrary, if people would just raise their minds a little, they could see that things like this come from the divine and not from nature, and that nature was created simply to clothe the spiritual and responsively represent it on the lowest level of the design. They compare such people to owls, which see in darkness but see nothing in the light. We are kind of like owls too, because we get so fixated on how do I look, how's my external stuff going, how's my reputation, which also goes away after you die, all that external stuff, whereas the truth is that the spiritual is what matters. And that's cool because, oh man, as I'm starting to get older and things are like creaky and they're not working as well and all that, you can kind of feel like I'm becoming less. I'm like passing my prime, or my, like, things are going downhill. But the idea that no, your spirit is right here and it's getting better all the time. Was that Goldfinger song from Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2? Getting older all the time, feeling younger in my mind. That's really happening. That the real you is just the best days are ahead of it, and the best days are ahead of it, and that you can do something about it. You can go out there and get more spiritually fit every day, because all it takes is when that trickle of heavenly water comes down, and so it's like, hey, go be cool, go be good, cool in the good sense, go be kind and act like God would act. You can let that in, those minerals get in. You know I'm doing the metaphor thing. The point is, be good, you'll look good spiritually, and that lasts forever.